Welcome to TalentWise, a podcast dedicated to identifying and unpacking challenges and solutions related to the workforce. In each episode, we will hear from experts in their fields or industries who are fighting to better understand and adapt to shifting workforce dynamics. What are those dynamics, you might ask? Put most simply, the workforce crisis we've seen coming for decades is upon us, and most of us are not nearly as prepared as we should be. We've hosted expert demographers who've helped us understand the scale and scope of this problem. We've heard from industry leaders and human resources professionals managing efforts to address the problem proactively. And we've met with leaders responsible for nurturing our mental health infrastructure, as well as leaders of local and national apprenticeship programs. Today, we are very fortunate to be joined by Gray Swoope, President and CEO of Vision First Advisors to TalentWise. Gray, welcome. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, Danny.
Well, really appreciate your being here. For those listening, Gray's company, Vision First Advisors, is an economic development consultancy that offers, among other services, location and advisory site selection informed by labor and market intelligence, state, regional, and local economic development strategies, incentives for negotiation and compliance, and marketing and communications advisory, implementation, and support. Gray has experience at every level of economic development, from public sector clients and projects to private corporations. Gray, thanks again for being here. We are thrilled to have you. Before we get into the meat of this conversation, you and I share a mutual friend in Greg Barker, who formerly was the president of the Economic Development Partnership of Alabama. You two know each other, a circuitous past. You were his pledge trainer in your fraternity. Is that right?
Who are you talking about? Yes, I think I was his pledge trainer.
Well, he is a really good man, and he speaks very highly of you, as he should. But it's great to know good people who know good people. So,
all I can say is he had a great leader that molded him into the man that he is today. Other than that, we have NDAs in place, and we can't talk about anything else.
Well, fair enough. I will steer away from that topic of conversation. So, related to the topic today, from your perspective, what are some of the workforce trends that are really shaping some of the economic development projects and conversations that you're having in markets all over the country today?
Well, I guess the first thing that is on everybody's mind, it has to be on everybody's mind, is the national demographic of population. And population equates workforce. And so if you look at a population nationally that's basically flat in growth, a little growth, but not much, it's impacting parts of the country in various ways. Some states, some urban metropolitan areas have been big winners of population and labor force growth, whereas more rural areas of our country have really suffered, some to the tune of population growth as much as 1% a year loss. And so those are real challenges that are impacting every aspect of our life, whether it's healthcare, whether it's your business. It's everything we do. And I don't know that we have really thought about it, even though this has been a problem that we've been predicting for decades.
You and I have talked about this previously, but workforce participation has been declining as well. So in addition to a constrained population, we have fewer people choosing to participate in the workforce. How is that affecting and influencing site selection, business expansion decisions for companies that may be looking nationally? And how does that sort of trickle down to local economies?
Well, as you know, Danny, or can imagine, the site selection process is really has become very sophisticated, data-driven to start with. First, second, and even sometimes third impressions of communities is through the lens of data. And when you start looking at workforce and talent in particular, labor participation rates jump out real quick. It's the first measure. And when you start then looking at it by gender, male, female, who's working, who's not working, or participate in the workforce, and then start and try to figure out what are the reasons behind it. What are the issues here in this market? There's some that we understand, that's because of that. And so, unfortunately, in some of the rural areas, those participation rates are in the low 40s. And there are lots of reasons behind it, but is it for an employer that's looking for a place to locate? Those are sometimes not issues that they're going to choose to be a part of. It really becomes a bigger issue for existing industry, existing businesses, and how do we maintain where we are today and keep the workforce we have, and how do we find ways to attract new talent? That is a huge challenge in trying to figure out pathways to bring workers back to the workforce.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the scale and sort of anemic growth of the workforce. We talked a little bit about participation. With baby boomers set to retire, 90% will exit the workforce by the end of this decade, and younger generations entering the workforce with new and different expectations about not just work and opportunity, but their relationship to work as well. What does that mean for employers and communities and for economic developers trying to create synergies with all these moving pieces?
Well, again, this is not a new issue. We did a terrible job of preparing for the exit of the baby boomers from the workforce. I had the great fortune to work with Haley Barbour when he was governor of Mississippi. And so Governor Barbour and I had a chance to be with the Center for Advanced Vehicular Systems, the CAV Center in Starkville, Mississippi, part of Mississippi State University, my alma mater. A little plug there. But the CAV Center, it does wonderful work. But in a conversation with a gentleman, Dr. Don Trotter, with Governor Barbour, it really came down to something that stuck with me back then. And I'm talking, this is in 2006 or 7-ish. What we're business faced with today, they either had to innovate, immigrate, or they will evaporate. And, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so innovation is, certainly a topic of discussion today when you talk about AI and how we can be more productive with less workers. That is going to be the conversation. Immigration, we're not going to fix on this podcast. We're not going to fix it in the next week or so, but legal immigration to somehow help and address the workforce needs of our country has to be part of the solution. I think everybody agrees to that. And if we don't do those things, the business is going to be challenged. And so communities have to look at it the same way. If you're going to have to innovate, then how do we teach skills to our people that will be part of this innovation movement? Unfortunately, if your product that you're making is the biggest cost of it is labor is the commodity, you're in trouble. And so you either going to have to innovate or use AI in that process. And there will be, great changes in that. And having skills to do those things is going to take starting at K through 12, and then after post-secondary, technical colleges, community colleges, and four-year universities are all going to have to participate in some way to address these needs.
Yeah, we've talked a lot, you and I, about the role that the business community needs to play to engage educators in their communities where they conduct business, so that the education community knows the type of workforce product to create, and they need to talk with the economic development communities in those local areas. How can economic developers sort of go ahead and engage members of the education community in sort of geographies where they operate?
Well, you and I talked, I'm a little bit biased to what's happening in your home state of Alabama, and watching the community colleges bringing synergy to the table, trying to understand what the workforce needs are and how they're changing. And I always look at Alabama has always been a leader in whether it was startup training, then to continue training, and now having an office of workforce with a secretary of workforce. That's beginning to address those issues. But I think at the end of the day, communities and their local technical community colleges, even their four-year universities, as I said, and their school systems, it's having the dialogue to understand where the workforce is going. Public education does not adjust quickly. It takes time, but it's that dialogue to think about new models. We've seen it around the country in our work where educational leaders have been, look, we can do things different. We don't have to think about this is the only way we can do it in order to earn revenue to keep our school funded. Looking at non-traditional ways of educating and being a part of that workforce mix, that's what it's going to take. The private sector is already doing it because the market screams that, there's a big absence of this and we're not getting it done. So you see a lot of employers turning to private sector to get this done. I don't think that's the answer. I guess if my business was the private sector doing that, yeah, that may be the answer. But somehow we're putting, taxpayer dollars in these systems that the systems need to be changed.
No, that's excellent. And I think that brings us to sort of a pivot in this conversation. We've been talking a lot about sort of the problem broadly, but share from your experience some of the workforce challenges that you think are unique when you're working in more metropolitan areas versus communities in rural parts of different states that are also trying to improve economic development outcomes in their areas.
Well, you look at where population is moving, and urban centers have done really well. And the question is why? During COVID, there was this huge thought process of being able to work remotely. Remotely meant that I could get my country estate, live out with the cows, and have my little farm behind the house, raise my own vegetables. And then when you try to connect to the internet, what happened? Maybe not. I can't do this anymore. So, I think that at the end of the day, where population is, growing are these large metro areas in states that have positive business climates. There are states that have shown that they're friendly to business, and you've seen that. There's a book that's it's a little updated now, how money walks, and it's about how wealth moved to different states, and it's the states that anybody can name them. You know where they are. There are states that are business friendly that it can attract business, but not only business went there, wealth went there, money followed, and so talent followed, and so rural areas, what do they need? How do they need to, attack that? I think it starts at home. And how do you work on things that attract talent? Sell to your strengths. What I said. I mean, there's an idea in my head that I would like to have a place and be able to work from home with cows in the background and stuff. And that's in showing that you can do that in a place that has the quality of the place, meaning I have access to the things that I want and use in my business and my lifestyle. It's all about talent attraction. And so if you can't attract talent, it's going to be you're going to have a difficult time finding workers if you can't attract talent. And you're definitely not going to retain talent if it's not a place that people want to live.
Yeah, and the competition is fierce. You got to rob Peter to pay Paul in this environment.
Yeah, no doubt.
As you think about all of the different industries that you have worked with to try to help move projects and opportunity along, and some of the economic development type projects that you get into, which do you sense are most at risk to workforce shortages, and where do you see real opportunity for growth?
Well, I think it's exactly what I said a minute ago. It's those that have labor as their commodity. And let's just say I'm in a place that I can find labor. Then the question becomes, timeliness to work, showing up on time, reliability, all those issues, drug testing. And so, is we're watching what's happening in innovation, automation, AI. When it comes to robotics, guess what? They don't call in sick. But now somebody's got to program it. And so I think those industries are faced with challenges that they're faced with big innovation decisions. It's capital intensive. It's, how do you maintain my workforce or at least have as minimum reductions as possible? But that's the reality. You're seeing it as equipment replaces people in productivity. But I think I shared with you that there was an article recently that interviewed Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, Alphabet, and the talk about AI in replacement of workers and displacement of workers. And it was interesting take, and one that I tend to look at as well, is that instead of jobs just being gone, any innovation in history, in industrialization of this country and even in the world, has resulted in more jobs. And one of the things that he said that just stuck out with me, with AI, each person now has their own personal genius assistant that's with them at all times to help them make decisions. So if I can take that and apply to commodity labor, like a welder, take skills, if you know how to weld, but then how does my new equipment help me through AI improve that process? And now that all of a sudden I'm a worker that can produce 10 times more of the production based on AI supplementing my work, then that I kind of think that's what will happen. And to do that, you're going to have the skills and education to do it. And so if we're not addressing that, then those areas are going to be at real risk.
For most people, your job is not in danger of being lost to AI, but it may be lost to someone who knows how to use AI better than you do.
Absolutely. That's well said.
Yep. Beyond talent attraction, are there retention strategies that you believe employers and communities and frankly states should consider to try to keep talent in place?
Yeah, I think it goes back to really that placemaking. It's the quality of the place. It's not just quality of life, but we hear it all the time. Whether it's manufacturing industry, is this a place that I can bring people in to be, to help start up the facility where they want to live here? What's that going to look like? It's continued to work on those things that I think are important. And then there are some places that have taken this lifestyle of a location and start quantitating it into things that you really don't think about. And the Metro Denver area is one that comes to mind that's done a good job of this. Living in Colorado, it's all about outdoor lifestyle, right? It's biking, it's mountain, it's skiing, it's being outside. They've been able to equate that into their retention and attraction strategies to say, by locating in this Metro Denver area, our healthcare costs are, and I don't know the exact number, X percentage lower here because of lifestyle versus other locations, and they can name the cities. That's doing it in a way that's very attractive to maintaining your workers and to, for people making decisions about where they want to put people to work or, be a part of their team.
If only everyone had the kind of assets that Denver, Colorado has to attract people to their community. As you think about, obviously different communities are at different places in the evolution of a more proactive effort to attract and retain talent. How do you recommend associations or chambers of commerce or workforce boards or departments like the one newly formed in Alabama? What's your advice on how they move faster to address workforce shortages together?
Well, the key statement is move faster. And look, I don't know if it's the ability to do with less regulation, but it has to be with ways to think differently. If we don't think differently and we try to put new ideas into the same system, you're going to get the same result. And so, whether it's regulation, whether it's personnel, whether it's organization, whether it's understanding core roles of how these systems fit together. I had a great opportunity to visit with Gary Smith too recently, and we were talking about, all the great programs that Alabama has. And we're looking at some of the work the community colleges are doing is trying to get those into a system and how do they systemically work together, because it's program rich but really systems poor. And that's the words he used. So they're not Gray Swoopes, but I have heard that before. But really, when looking at it together, that was kind of our observation. And again, not being critical, but I think that's the challenge: is how do you get each piece to work, whether it's startup, it's continuing education, whether it's changing the skills. And it's that whole structure, that whole ecosystem has to work together.
Yeah. And in those communities where some of that is starting to happen and collaboration is kind of galvanizing across these different communities, from the business sector, economic development, education, etc. If that group comes to you and says, hey, Gray, what can we do? Given that we're ready, we're working together, we are constrained in terms of resources, what have you. But what are some things that we must do today to kind of future-proof some of these efforts for the next decade or so?
Well, first of all, you have to have educational leaders that will listen and employers that will listen. And so often I'm sitting in a room. Nancy Blumheitz on our team is one that often we say that you can't go talk to any community college because you piss them all off. So you just, because you get so upset because they go straight to, here's our overview, and we can read it on the website. Mm-hmm. And then employers, on the other hand, frustrate you because they just start bashing public systems. Don't get what I want. Here's what I'm losing. My retention's this, blah, blah, blah. They both need to listen. And when we find that they listen and start understanding each other's needs, and then what are the real root of the, as we see, of the symptoms, when you find those root causes, then that's where they make things happen. And so, you'll find it in workforce participation. When you start diving into it, it's transportation issues. It's affordable childcare issues. It's, looking at demographics. It's single moms trying to support a household. It's all types of issues that go with that are, you're not going to find one program that's going to fix all that, but it's going to have to be a multitude of programs that take it small bites at a time, and then you can find answers by doing that, or get answers by doing that.
Well, where can our listeners go to get more information about you and Vision First?
Well, certainly, like everybody else, you can find us on LinkedIn. I'm personally on LinkedIn, and connect that way. Our company, Vision First Advisors, as well. It's on social, but you also go to our website. It's a long, I know, visionfirstadvisors.com, but it's all spelled out, and they can find us that way.
Gray, you are wonderful. I can't let you go without asking a curveball question. So what are you looking forward to in the future, personally or professionally?
Oh, wow. There's just revolutionary change going on, a new industry that's going to set the tone for the next decades. And just, I'm a little bit jealous. I think with AI and supporting what we'll do, that we will find more cures for cancer. I think that the computing power, the knowledge that's there's a lot of good. Now, a lot of people want to talk about the dark side. Yeah, that's real. But I like looking at how technology can be used for the greater of mankind. I'm excited about it. I love it when as a space nerd, as a kid, on the Apollo programs, an uncle that worked for NASA. followed every mission as an elementary student. I'm excited what's happening there. I do think my children will probably see, and I hope in my lifetime, that we'll see man on Mars. And so those things are exciting to me. I love the new technologies there and what is happening. And I just hope that I can try to keep up as I grow older to know how to use it and not have to call the kids to help me, the grandkids or whoever, to help me, help set up my phone.
Yeah, well,
or whatever that device may be.
That's right. Well, the good news is that it is not going to be boring. So we're going to have a little fun along the way. You've graced us with your presence here today. Thank you so much for joining us. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and thank you to you and your team for all of the work that you do in this space. It's really, really important. And the impact that you have in local communities where you all go to work is very clear all over the country. So we would love to have you back on a future episode of Talent Wise. And between now and then, best of luck to you and your team. Really appreciate your joining us today.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate the work you do and the opportunity to visit with you today. And as I tell all our friends, my mantra for work is be relentless. Let's go get after it.
Let's go get after it. Well, I hope everyone listening at home will join us next time. Thank you so much.